What we're experiencing most recently is a steady decline in the respect for the rule of law and respect for human rights. There seems to be a steady decline, not only a decline, but a reversal of the gains we had made in this area. Increasingly, we're experiencing cases of enforced disappearances, cases of arbitrary arrests, cases of mistreatment, which speak to the fact that the country is experiencing serious backsliding in this area. And most importantly, having emerged out of a bruising electoral process, it is unfortunate that we continue to witness the incidents like this arbitrary arrest of Lord Mayor Erias Lukwago.
All right. You talked about the gains that we had made as a country. Maybe we need to begin by reflecting from there. From the perspective of rule of law and human rights, what are some of the gains that we had made that you think are being eroded at the moment?
Speaking about gains that we had made, you start with the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, 1995. By the mere fact that we entrenched a chapter on human rights, and for long we admired as a country having a very progressive constitution. That in itself was a very important gain. The fact that we no longer respect that particular value again shows that we are reversing a gain that we had made. The other gain we had made is the fact that we have three pillars of government. We have the executive, we have the legislature, and we also have the judiciary. Now, speaking about those three pillars of government, each of them have particular mandates and roles that they have to play. For example, the executive, it has organs under which particular obligations have been spelled out or provided. For example, the police is entrusted with maintaining law and order. The military is entrusted with the protection of the country, ensuring safety and, of course, that our borders are safe and general stability. And when you speak about such organs, you are assured that when it comes to ensuring respect for laws that are enacted, they would do their role as provided. But what we see increasingly is an erosion of that. You find the military increasingly interfering with the role of the police. There are many arrests that are carried out by the military, which should not be actually the case, because it's the police that had been mandated or has been mandated to carry out that role. So that in itself is a lost gain, because if the roles had been clearly differentiated, in itself that was a gain, and the fact that now they are being eroded again is a loss that we take note of. Again, talking about the pillars of government, we have the judiciary, which is supposed to be an arbiter in itself. So when the judiciary, for example, issues, like it had done, a notice to the effect that so and so had to be served for the wrongs he had got involved, he had carried out, that in itself should actually be appreciated. But when you hear somebody being arbitrarily arrested and detained just because the lawyer Erias Lukwago was in the process of serving him, again that in itself is a lost cause. Because why would you arrest arbitrarily and detain arbitrarily a servant of court? Servant of court is supposed to perform according to the etiquettes and dictates of the court. Now, that in itself, the fact that the independence of the judiciary to a large extent is increasingly being interfered with, that also shows you that yes, again is being lost. Let's talk about Parliament. We have just witnessed incidents which are ugly. What we saw recently regarding the former Speaker of Parliament in itself is a very ugly incident, in the fact that Parliament under Article 79 has oversight roles it has to play. It has to ensure democratic governance, but corruption to be one of the shortcomings that we have witnessed in Parliament. That is a lost cause, because Parliament should actually be the overseer, not only of the executive, but also ensuring that no one goes unpunished if he or she engages in acts of corruption. So those are gains that we had made, but are being lost. Another gain that we had made, the Constitution made provision for different players to promote respect for human rights. We have human rights defenders, we have lawyers, we have judges, even individuals in their own right. Now we have witnessed cases where people have tried to assert themselves, to speak out, and what do they gain? They gain arrests and unnecessary detention. Now, for long we have been fighting against torture, against arbitrary detention, arbitrary arrests. You remember the phenomenon of safe houses, something we fought for a long time, and we thought that was now a relic of the past, only to resurface in what they call basement, in what they call ungazetted detention centers. That in itself, I would say, is a gain that is lost. The fact that today we are talking about arbitrary arrest, arbitrary detention, we are talking about torture, we are talking about corruption. These are all losses that we are now talking about. The fact that we established institutions to fight corruption, for example, the IGG, the Anti-Corruption Court. By now, corruption should be more or less a thing of the past, but it seems to be growing deeper and deeper every day, and no one seems to be taking a very deliberate effort to ensure that it is a thing of the past. We hear more of, oratory about it, but in terms of concrete and deliberate action to stamp it out, you don't really see that as a gain anymore. So there is a loss there that we have incurred, and that shows you that increasingly we are experiencing a reversal, and the reversal is all about gains lost to the detriment of the ordinary citizen.
All right. You kept on mentioning some issues, arbitrary arrests and detention. And I've had this issue coming up, not only in terms of our history as a country, when you read some books and also hear people speak about the past, including President Yoweri Museveni, he used to talk about those issues, but also added the word extrajudicial killings. Now, in terms of arbitrary arrests and detention, I've also had lawyers talking about the manner in which people are arrested. From your understanding of the Constitution, rule of law, and human rights, which is the best way for us to avoid these issues of arbitrary arrest and arbitrary detention? What does the law, presuppose?
The law makes it very clear how someone suspected of committing an offense should be brought to book. It spells out the procedure that has to be followed. It tells you that an arrest would be preceded, for example, with an arrest warrant. If there is a search, there should be a warrant for a search warrant. There should be involvement of political leaders, for example, LC1 in an arrest. Someone is to be arrested, and LC1 should be informed and involved. You could serve summons to the person who is suspected of committing a crime, and that person, unless he or she does not respond, can actually go to the police station and be charged. Now, when that does not happen, and what you have and what we continue to experience are drones picking up people arbitrarily, military officers or military agents, climbing walls to more or less abduct people, that in itself is arbitrary. So what is not arbitrary is what is done in accordance with the law and procedures, and when that one is not followed, then it becomes arbitrary. Now when it comes to detention, the law has also made provision of where people should be detained. We know the prisons, they have been gazetted under the law, and they are known. Those are places where people are detained when they are arrested, and of course where the courts remand those who have committed crimes and are being investigated. Now, for one to be subjected to detention in a basement or an ungazetted detention center, that is arbitrary detention. And for a person also to be taken to a place which is not known, that is what we call an enforced disappearance. Enforced disappearance means that the whereabouts of this person are not established. The family members don't know, the lawyers don't know, no one has been informed of where this person has been taken. Then that person is under enforced disappearance. Those three phenomena in themselves are an abuse of the legal process, they are an abuse of the rule of law, and as such are undesirable.
And you've been speaking about the issue of Erias Lukwago. You were in the news today. In fact, I was looking at various channels where you were interviewed and quoted. In this situation where we have had Erias Lukwago, I don't know if to use the word arrested or kidnapped, because there are so many words being used out there. But at least eventually we realized, we found out where exactly he is through the X handle of the Chief of Defense Forces, who actually confirmed that he was in the possession of the military. What do you think needs to be done in this kind of situation? Let's assume Erias Lukwago probably has an issue to answer. What would be the right procedure?
If Erias Lukwago has an issue or is suspected of having committed a crime, what is expected is to be summoned, to be served with a warrant of arrest, for him to be taken to a police station and charged according to the law, spelling out what provisions of the law he has breached. And then the Constitution is very clear, within 48 hours be brought to court, and the court would then hear what charges are against him, and then his fate is determined. But for anyone outside those parameters that I've talked about to claim to have possession of him, that in itself is arbitrary, unwarranted, illegal, and of course an abuse in itself. So whether General Muhoozi comes up and says I'm in possession of this person, the fact is he's not a gazetted place of detention, number one. The manner of his arrest is outside the law, is illegally carried out. The charges against him are unknown. So the entire process becomes unlawful, illegal, and arbitrary.
Well, the way you speak, you seem to suggest that the military has no place in issues of enforcing the law or dealing with crime and so forth. But we are meant to understand that in the current law, there is a possibility that the military can actually be allowed to carry out arrests in support of the police. Have you looked at that particular policy and whether this could be one of the situations, Dr. Sowanya?
I don't think that is one of the situations. I think the Constitution has made it very clear, as I said at the very beginning, what the mandates of each of these organs of state is.
Understood.
The police has been entrusted with the power of maintaining law and order, and it's well spelled out under Article 212. The military is also entrusted with ensuring the stability, safety and stability of the country by defending the borders of this country. Unless there is a state of war, a state of instability, for example, there is a general uprising and there is a state of instability, and the police is overwhelmed, then of course one could have room as an exceptional circumstance for the military to intervene. But you are just arresting an individual like me, an ordinary person, who does not even pose a threat to you. Why would you climb my perimeter wall? Why would you abduct me? Why would you subject me to that horrendous treatment? So there is no justification whatsoever for the actions that we are witnessing against Elias Lukwago or any other person who has been subjected to that type of treatment. That treatment is unwarranted, uncalled for, arbitrary, unlawful, and deserves government action, immediate government action. One of the challenges we are facing is that every time we come up with, we speak about abuses taking place, the government keeps silent. Why is the government mute on matters of rights and on matters of people's dignity?
When you talk about the government, who are you referring to? Because we are part of the government, even as a community.
No.
Because some people will tell you they elected the people.
That is a very extended version.
So which particular arm of the government are you referring to, Dr. Sowore?
Here we are talking about the executive. The executive is mute. It has power over any person, and as such, it should be seen to act. We have a government that we have just recently elected. We have a president, we have a vice president, we have all members of parliament, but I've not had anyone, no member of parliament, I haven't had members of parliament coming out to denounce these actions and call for the immediate release and unconditional release of Elias Lukwago. I've not had ministers coming out. So the executive, the legislature, their role is to ensure the safety and dignity of Ugandans of whatever form, and it is unjustifiable for them to remain mute in situation of this, in cases of this, or cases like this.
I think you're being a little bit unfair. President Yoweri Museveni, who leads this country, came to power. One of the promises, if you look at the NRM 10-point program, was to deal with these kind of situations: arbitrary arrests, rule of law, human rights, and the strict observance of the law. And he has been vocal on these issues a number of times, saying no more extrajudicial killings, no more arbitrary arrests, and there must be total respect of human rights. It's even a pillar in the 4th National Development Plan that begins operating next financial year.
This is no longer about words, it's about action. What we are asking for is action. It is well and good to pronounce oneself on the zero tolerance against torture, zero tolerance against corruption, zero tolerance against illegal detention. The most important thing is what action are you carrying out? Are you saying, for example, that President Museveni is not aware that Elias Lukwago was arrested and detained arbitrarily? Is anyone not aware that Eddie Mutwe was subjected to horrendous treatment? All the cases that have been documented and over time of arrest, are we saying the executive is not aware? It is no longer about pronouncements. It's no longer about rhetoric. It's about practice. We just want total respect for every individual, irrespective of their status, social, economic, political, cultural, or otherwise. Everyone deserves respect. Everyone's voice matters. And everyone, as a citizen of this country, deserves protection. So when there are breaches that take place, we definitely call the state to account. We must hold them accountable for whatever misdeeds take place. So here we are saying there must be an unconditional release of Elias Lukwago, and the abuses of that nature must stop. It's no longer about the 10-point program, because that is well known. It's not about the Constitution. The Constitution is very clear about all these shortcomings. But what we are saying is that any government that respects and upholds the rights of these individuals cannot allow any single individual, because that could be your brother, it could be your sister, it could be your parent, it could be anybody. And therefore, no one deserves that type of treatment. So we are inviting him to go beyond rhetoric, beyond pronouncements, to make sure no torture continues in this country, no arbitrary detention, no arbitrary arrest, no abuse of the court process. everyone deserves respect, and that is why governments are elected. They are elected for one sole reason, by the way. Under international law, all governments are elected one sole reason: to uphold the rights of their citizens and to protect their property. And everything else is subordinate to that.
Well, Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. My guest this evening is Dr. Livingstone Ssewanyan, arguably one of the leading veteran human rights defenders and campaigners in this country. And we are looking at the rule of law and human rights in our country. So what would be your message, before we go for a quick break, what would be your message to the establishment? How can we get back to that acceptable direction where you'd like to see this country going in terms of good governance and human rights?
My message is for us to match our frameworks with action. This country has very good legal frameworks. It has made provision for the enjoyment of rights under its constitution, under various instruments like the Human Rights Enforcement Act, under its civil procedures. They are, even under the National Development Plan, you have just talked about one of the pillars there, respect for human rights and good governance. All these has been that. There are even institutions that have been established to make sure that rights are upheld and protected. Now we need to go beyond that, because that now amounts to rhetoric. Beyond rhetoric to action. My message is we need to move beyond rhetoric to action. And international law is also clear. If anyone, because no one is a saint, we are not saying we are saints, no one is a saint. We are saying if an abuse takes place, then government must swiftly act to punish the perpetrator. So when perpetrators of these abuses are not held accountable, then they are seen to be above the law. And what then prevails is what we call a culture of impunity. And we don't want that to happen. We want everyone to live in peace and harmony with each other. And my message is, yes, you have been elected to various positions in government. You have a responsibility to protect the citizens of this country. Let's move beyond words to action, just to ensure that everyone feels at peace and can express himself on a matter, however divergent it may be. There must be a degree of political tolerance and respect for one another.
All right, Spectrum. Let's continue with the discussion now by looking at the implications, because from the perspective of governance, we are told the state of human rights in a country and the rule of law reflects on the nature of governance that is at play. First of all, do you agree with that analysis? And also, what kind of trajectory are we likely to see as a country if such issues that you have elaborated from the beginning of this discussion are not attended to?
I begin by stating very clearly that human rights and good governance are integral to the development process of any country. When you uphold rights and you practice good governance practices, there is an underlying presumption that you release people's latent potential, meaning they have that freedom, whether innate or otherwise, to express, to think, to plan, and to be party to the development process. The idea there is that if I disagree with a particular line of action, I will express myself. If I agree with it, I will do likewise. That I will be party to the development process by ensuring that my views are heard, and I have no form of fear whatsoever that by expressing dissent or alternative idea, I will be victimized. So the whole idea of upholding the rights of people is to promote their participation. And I've been following President Museveni's recent speeches. He constantly talks about socio-economic transformation. Now, socio-economic transformation can only be possible where people's inertia is released. Releasing inertia means their ideas, their ability to coerce or coalesce around a particular issue, their ability to even correct what is going wrong is enhanced or is to a large extent recognized. Now, when you do not recognize that and you subject them to behavior that is likely to cause fear, is likely to ridicule, is likely to make them feel isolated or sometimes discriminated against, then the chances of releasing that inertia are minimized. And that's why in all countries where we see a lot of development, there is a lot of freedom. Actually, if you go to countries like South Korea, you go to countries like let's leave alone the most developed countries, Indonesia, these new, what they call the new tigers. You'll find a lot of vibrant expression, a vibrant discussion, a lot of coalescing around issues, and even people dissenting when they don't agree with the government policy in terms of demonstrations and the like. They are not absolutely banned. They allow them to express themselves, and then from that government picks and also improves on its policy framework and also its programs. But now what we are experiencing now, and most likely impact of what this trajectory is, that people now go underground. They go underground. They no longer speak about anything. They only observe. But under that sort of observation and failure to participate is what grows is hatred. Hatred for the establishment, hatred for the leadership, hatred for various reasons. And as a result of the hatred, you get conflicts. And again, you are likely to face situations we have had before. So you can see that there is a reason why worldwide there is agreement that rights are important. And even Uganda, by the way, has acceded to various international human rights instruments, showing that there is an appreciation that those values enshrined in those instruments are key and critical to our own development process. And that is why, for example, in the National Development Plan, they have been inscribed and enshrined, and that is the very essence why they need to be observed. So this trajectory goes contrary to the agreed principles and practices, and therefore, under all circumstances, must be discarded. There must be every voice that is reasonable must denounce behavior of, and also it has also another bearing in terms of partnerships and cooperation. In terms of international cooperation, countries cooperate when they have shared values. Now, when these values are not shared, there are also chances that many of these partnerships may not actually result into important and meaningful results. Therefore, it's important for our development. It is important for our own well-being that people are treated the way they deserve to be treated, and that systems work and institutions work according to the mandates that they have been provided.
All right, and now looking at where we are, and it will be very important for us to have a situation where we address some of these issues. Sometimes we talk about early warning, and we talk about interventions. Some people have been talking about national dialogue, a way of trying to address some of these issues, which sometimes have roots in our historical past, including the issues that we are looking at. You talk about hatred. There are some places where it's very difficult to talk about certain people because of what they did in the past. Some people have even talked about national reconciliation and truth-telling. What do you think would be the best way for us as a country, not only to address the issues that are prevailing today, but even issues that still hold us back in terms of our historical realities?
I find sometimes I find it very appropriate sometimes to prescribe very simple solutions. Yes, we could go into truth and reconciliation, we can go into national dialogue, but the most important thing is behavior. It is all about behavior. It's all about mandate. As I said right from the beginning, we have frameworks that provide mandates for particular institutions and particular people. If only they could stick to those mandates and respect the mandates of other people and behave according to their mandates, to what is required of their mandates, then there would be no problem. There are disciplinary procedures that are taken within the military. There are disciplinary procedures that are taken within police. There are disciplinary procedures taken in very many institutions. But what is most important at the end of the day is sticking to your own mandate and your own procedures. The fact that we see overlaps sometimes which create excesses is where the problem lies. The Constitution, for example, has provided an elaborate framework on how institutions will behave and how these rights will be upheld. And let's just stick to that. And when we do that, at the end of the day, I do not see a serious challenge. It's about belief, it's about value system, it's about mandate. And once you do that, then there is no need to remind, there is no need to condemn, there is no need for anyone to hold you to account because you are doing what is required of you. Even when you fail, there are also expected behavior that, I would say, I'm sorry for what I have done. If I'm sorry, then there must be corrective measures that are taken. So at the end of the day, it's about behavior, it's about mandate, it's about, procedures that are laid out, and once they are adhered to, then we wouldn't have situations that we are experiencing.
All right, let's go to all these issues that the listener has put across.
First of all, I want to welcome the comments. They show that the listeners are following and they are concerned about the current situation and some of these breaches that take place. In simple terms, what all of them are expressing is the fact that the rule of law is at stake and that corrective action needs to be taken. Of course, many are pessimistic about the future, and they are mindful of the necessity to ensure that systems, procedures, and institutions work as expected. So, again, in terms of response, what I can only say is that many of these breaches have the effect of creating fear in the population. Fear to the effect that the people can no longer pronounce themselves on what is good and what is bad. Fear for them to have alternative and express alternative views on government policies and programs. And again, a growing feeling that all is not well. And that is something we need to reverse. And that is my clarion call to the government. That you see, you have been entrusted with power. You have been entrusted with authority and responsibility. It needs to be used properly. As a government, your role is very simple. Just uphold the rights of the citizens and ensure their stability and, of course, their welfare. So apparently, when these breaches occur, because as I said, no one is a saint, government must be seen to be concerned. They must come out clearly. I saw one of the comments was the effect that if they are part of the executive, but executive is a broad thing. And we know who is responsible for the breaches. So when I say executive, I mean right from His Excellency the President,
the Commander-in-Chief.
The Commander-in-Chief. I'm also talking about the ministers. I'm also talking about members of parliament, because they have been entrusted with authority by the people to ensure good governance for this country. So I expect some form of action. I expect some form of response. I expect them, like now they are in Changkwanzi, to address themselves to some of these matters which are of our concern. So increasingly, people should not be disconnected from government. People should feel part and parcel of the government. And the government must do all in its power to make sure that people do not feel aggrieved by its actions, by its policy, by its programs. Because when we talk about socioeconomic development, you are talking about improving the plight of the people. Improving the plight of the people means that you respect them, you uphold their liberties, you listen to them, you guarantee their freedom, and as such, they are able to express themselves on anything, whether bad or good. And at the end of the day, you are all winners. So when we talk about rights, we are not necessarily condemning government. We are saying, if we are all going to be winners, then it is a condition precedent that our views must be heard, must be respected. The treatment that we are accorded must be respectful, that the laws that we have made must be implemented to the letter, and the procedures in every situation, whether civil or criminal, must be followed to the letter. When that happens, then there is no hatred, there is no one who feels discriminated, or who feels isolated, or feels that maybe there are groups of people who increasingly are becoming untouchable and therefore can do whatever they please. So at the end of the day, it is about stability, it's about peace, it's about growing as a nation. And when you grow as a nation, you are respectful of whatever you have agreed on in principle. The Constitution has laid out what we have agreed on in principle. The laws that are enacted have been discussed, debated, and where we have had disagreement, we have shown that. So increasingly, what we are calling upon the government of Uganda, be respectful of your people, let the organs of government play their roles as prescribed in their mandates, and the procedures that have been laid out should be followed. And when that happens, then we do not experience the mishaps or experience the abuses that we continue to witness. There is no room in this era for abuse or mishaps. The world is moving in a way that people are more mindful and should be more mindful about what the future holds for them. Everyone wants to wake up knowing that he will not be harmed, he will not be molested, will not be mistreated, and that the law will be followed. And when that happens, then we call ourselves citizens. A citizen is one who belongs to a particular territorial space, and in that space he has a voice, he has a role, and at the end of the day he's a winner.
We're going to take more comments.